Party leader Jimmy Wanjigi on Ruto's debt audit task force. Listen in.
So you attach the law to any action in terms of money, right? So you look at the law, what does it say about debt? When can a country take debt? When can we take debt and how much can we take debt for? So our laws are very clear. We can only take debt for development in the medium to long term.
Yep.
If we have cash flow problems, right, we can only take a certain percentage. In fact, they say 5% of the last audited accounts, tax returns.
Yep.
So like this year, if you collected 2.2 trillion, you can only take 100 billion cash flow, which must be paid within the same year. And normally they say you can do, in fact, it's clear there, an overdraft at CBK.
Right.
Right? But any other debt must go towards a project, a development project.
Yes.
Okay.
That is in the budget. All right? Now,
So the project must be provided for in the budget.
in the budget, and in fact, in the budget, the debt is actually shown. Anything outside of that is illegal.
Okay.
Now, just to give you a synopsis, because this is very tragic, people need to understand why they are being told to raise taxes. It's because there's a monster in the room, right?
Yeah.
And it is this payment of this debt. It is the monster. There's no other monster. Just to give you a historical analysis, when Moi handed over power to Kibaki, of every 100 shillings of tax revenue, only 28 was going to the payment of debt. And at the time, Moi had a tax revenue of 170 billion shillings.
170 billion
170 billion.
is what we were all paying.
Yeah, is what we're all paying. In 2001, that was the situation.
Right.
When Kibaki handed over to Uhuru Kenyatta, Kibaki had raised revenue to 1 trillion shillings from 170 by expanding the economy, not by raising tax levels, but expanding the economy, removing barriers to growth. And of every 100 shillings of that tax revenue, 18 was going to the payment of debt. So he had reduced it. When Uhuru handed over to William Samoei Ruto, and please, I'd like to take note that Ruto was part of that government anyway.
Okay.
Tax revenue had increased to 2 trillion.
From 1.2 into
From
10.
1 trillion of Kibaki in 2013
Yep.
to 2023 to 2 trillion. Right? So it had gone double. But of every 100 shillings of tax revenue, 70 was going
To that.
to debt.
From 18.
You saw William Ruto earlier this year even confirmed that.
Yep.
But he tried to get out of my 100 shilling analogy and making it 10 shillings.
Okay.
But he said the same thing. 7 shillings is going to,
Debt.
of every 10 going to debt. Today, as we are talking, from the numbers I've seen from KRA yesterday, KRA are saying they've collected 500 billion in 1 month. I think, to me, that's like fantasy. Right? In the month of June, they've collected 500 billion. I think it's like fantasy. They've been collecting about 165 to 170, let's say 170 average per month. But now they collected 500, fine. So they went to 2.4. If you look at debt payments, they're 1.866. So it's roughly 78% today of every 100, 78 shillings of every 100 shillings is going to the payment of debt. In other words, it's getting higher and higher.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Now, when you have that situation, you got to understand that you're now borrowing to eat. You're borrowing to pay salaries. You're borrowing to pay petrol for vehicles of police, right?
Yeah.
You are borrowing for counties, okay?
Yeah.
So you are in big trouble.
Okay.
So the reason he is trying to raise tax is to cover that problem. And now he's unable to do it. Okay? He's unable to do it. Now, he decides he's going to set up a task force because of this public pressure. I think the one thing the president should understand is that he does not have much credibility, right, with the public. And he cannot purport to do anything right now on his own. Decide he's picking names, He's deciding on which way. I'm sorry. If he does not understand that right now is a moment of consultation and wide consultation, he does not have the monopoly. He has had that free will all this time, and he has sent us into a bigger ditch. He does not have the luxury to decide on his own. He must consult. And it seems something that's prevalent with this regime. Every time they do something, it is being contested in court. It's like they don't seek legal advice properly. There seems to be some problem within. So he should not have done a task force. I have done that audit. What he should do is take from what has probably happened in the past, call a judicial commission of inquiry, make it public, like the Goldenberg one, and talk about it being public debt forensic audit. All right? Have a secretariat that includes the Auditor General. And let us all go and present to that judicial inquiry. Given a time frame of maybe a month or two, we can finish this thing. It's very simple. There's nothing hard about this thing. You just look at the law and see what was passed. So, for example, in the last 10 years, the years that we had done the audit under the Uhuru regime, all right? The budget only approved 2 trillion for loans. All right?
Cumulatively.
Cumulatively, in the 2 terms of Uhuru. Right? He took
2 trillion in shillings.
in shillings.
Okay.
Yes, 2. No, it's good
Yes,
to be clear.
important.
It's very important.
2 trillion.
Kenya shillings.
But outside of the budget, and it says you can only borrow what is in the budget. That is in the Constitution and it's in PFM. But they borrowed 6.4 trillion, which means over 4 trillion above what was approved. In other words, was not on the budget. So you ask yourself, what is going on here? All right?
Okay.
This current government, in the last 1 year, the borrowings that are on the budget are 351 billion shillings. Foreign and external loans. William Samoei Ruto has gone to borrow 1.8. All right? Which is roughly 1.5 trillion above what is in the budget. Who gave him that permission? Who gave the Treasury that permission? And anything you do not do that is lawful means that you are doing criminality. You're doing criminality. And I said very clearly here. And you can question me till the cows come home. That is criminality.
And so you.
And I just want to add, just to give you an overview, summary. You borrow for what is described as the deficit, the difference between expenditure and your income of taxation.
You're projected.
Your projected, not your projected deficit.
Yeah.
But your projected deficit must be in line with the law, which is that projected deficit can only be in development. It can't be amorphous at I need to pay a loan, so I just go and borrow. There's nothing like that.
Unajua stima inaweza panda.
Hakuna kitu kama hiyo kwa laws of Kenya. So we did what you call, and the IMF is very good at doing this, what you call a primary balance, which means that you look at the expenditure of a nation, of a government, without debt payments. So we did a primary balance from July 2013 all the way to June 2023, 10 years. What was the development expenditure? 6 trillion. 6 trillion, they were only going to borrow 2 trillion for that development, by the way, in those years. So 6 trillion. Higher. You take a county, how much was it? Salaries of all government.
Yep.
Pensions. What you call operations and management costs. It came to 14.6 trillion. That is an exact number. Higher. Then you say, what has KRA
So
said
14.6 trillion
in 10 years?
for
Those are
development.
expenses.
All expenses.
All expenses of government.
Recurrent plus.
No. Recurrent plus development.
Development.
Correct.
Okay.
Recurrent plus development.
Development.
Without payment of
Debt. Okay.
So you remove the payment of debt. It's called primary balance.
Okay.
All right? It comes to 14.6 trillion. Then you say, what were the actual tax revenues from KRA?
At the close of every financial year.
At the close of every financial year. So from July 2023 all the way to July 2013, all the way to June 2023, 10 years.
Yeah.
They came to 13.3 trillion.
KRA.
KRA.
Okay.
That is tax revenue.
Tax revenue.
Yes. So what is the difference there?
1 point something trillion.
1.3 trillion. Correct?
Yes.
1.3 trillion.
Yes.
So if we needed to borrow
That was our deficit
to run our...
for 10 years.
Okay.
1.3
3 trillion.
What we are saying, William Ruto has borrowed in this last 1 year outside of the budget.
Deficit.
Is the deficit for 10 years. Now, what did we borrow in those 10 years? 7.7 trillion. Are we together?
We are.
So we borrowed 6.4 trillion above what we needed,
For what?
which is a deficit for the next 10 years. 6.4 trillion we did not need, is not lawful. We do not owe because it's not lawful and never came to us. They cannot show us what that money did.
Okay.
On any budget, they cannot show us.
Jimmy.
And that is what you now call odious
Debt.
Now, we are paying heavily for this that never came to our benefit. And in Mozambique, citizens went to the court of justice on something similar to our Eurobond. They called theirs a tuna bond that had been provided by big banks such as Credit Suisse and RVM Bank of Russia. Right? The defendants were the government and even parliament. And their laws are not even as good as ours. Public finance laws are not as good as ours. And they won the case.
Who?
That
The
$2 billion,
citizens.
the citizens won. $2 billion is odious debt.
You go and pay it.
You go and pay it. And Credit Suisse were forced to eat humble pie with RVM and even return money that had been paid for those loans. We have a similar situation, but we are talking about 6+ trillion. But I say that is what was taken outside of the law. Nobody is looking at how much we have paid.
Over time.
Now, during the period of the first audit, which ended in July 2022, we had paid loan repayments of 5.6 trillion. I want you to do your sum again, CT. 5.6 trillion. Those were repayments of loans from our taxes. The year 2022 to 2023, this year we have paid
1.8.
1.8. How much is that?
8.8.
Right. And the government is still telling you you owe 11 trillion.
Wololo.
You know, really.
That is
Yes,
19.
it's never coming down. It's always increasing. We have a better exchange rate.
Yeah, but-
Okay,
but-
but
Jimmy, remember we had a bad
so
exchange rate
you
not very
tell
long
me,
ago.
you're correct, and it's going to get there. I think you saw the credit rating of Moody's. Have you seen it?
Yeah,
This morning,
It's not good.
it has gone to C, AA.
It is not good.
And remember, we said when you hit C, you're heading for default.
Kwisha wewe.
Kwisha wewe. So you're going to see that exchange rate completely change. Now, so we have paid 8.8. 6 we never took for our benefit.
But this is in
And
interest
then-
and principal.
Interest and principal. Correct. 8.8. 6 we never took. 6.4, in fact, exactly, we never took. Was never to our benefit. It's not on our laws. Okay? And we are being told we still owe 11. Do you know, this is what you call a massive Ponzi scheme. And this Ponzi scheme is our chain. It is our chain. It is our slavery chain, our modern day slavery chain. And until we yank it off, you're going to see no change in this country but pain. And you yank it off this way.
Okay, there we go.
You yank it off this way. What is not in our laws is what is called odious debt. And that we have paid to odious debt, we demand back. And if we analyze that, that means we have no debt. And without debt, that means you can free up the taxpayer from paying debt. You can reduce taxation, but you also avail something very interesting, which is domestic money for us to go and take. Right? There's no law item that says domestic debt is funding anything in development. These bonds and bills, it does not exist. Bonds, which are long-term, have not funded any development project in our budget. We don't know why our banks, and soon we are going to call them out, why our banks are giving our money to our government for bonds that do not exist in the budget. And then our taxes are going to pay those exorbitant interest rates.
Back to the banks.
Back to the banks.
And not
This
coming
is
back.
a Ponzi scheme of some banks here, and they better stop it. They better stop it. They have created oligarchs of themselves at our expense, and they better stop it. Their time is now coming to an end. They better stop it.
Okay. Jimmy, I want to ask a series of questions. Number one, you've given us the primary balance and you calculated it. I said the World Bank is fond of doing this. Have any of our institutions done a primary balance?
Any of our institutions?
Yeah.
Yes, Treasury does so continuously
Okay.
to IMF.
Does it reflect the same thing?
Well, do they publicize it?
Uh-huh.
They don't publicize it to us.
So we don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
But it's something that is required by IMF consistently. So they know this. What I'm sure they do not say, right, is exactly what that deficit is.
Okay.
I think you saw there, the Auditor General says that they talk about funds being fungible. So we don't know how much fungibility they put in those figures. It seems fungible is a word that is commonplace
can be
by the National
Can be
Treasury.
replaced.
Yes, can be replaced.
Pun intended.
Pun
Now,
intended.
second question. Our Auditor General, over the years of presenting audit reports to Parliament, has the Office of the Auditor General flagged this debt that is taken outside of the law?
Unfortunately, the Auditor General, even though in their terms of reference, they have a forensic audit mandate, and they have done so in various things. For example, they did so on the Mafia House scandal. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
They did.
They did a forensic audit on the Mafia House scandal. So they have never done so on the debt. Never. They do this general audit, but not a forensic.
Not forensic audit.
Not forensic audit.
But
The other office is the COB.
Control of budget.
The COB has a very clear mandate. In the Constitution, Article 228(4), the controller of budget shall oversee the implementation of the budgets of the national and county governments by authorizing withdrawal from public funds under Articles 204, 206, 207. Now, that means that the overall budget she oversees
Yes.
and must give approval for. Now, if she's giving approval for funds to be withdrawn from the consolidated bank fund to pay a debt, it must be clear what that debt did on the budget at some time in history.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, she should not be approving it.
Okay.
So she's also highly responsible here.
Have the controller of
And
budget
culpable.
reports ever raised those issues?
Well, I think you have had them
Saying-
you have had them on your show here.
Reports to Parliament indicating that I declined to authorize this payment, or I authorized this payment with this condition, and the condition was later met or was not met.
I think you've seen various reports over the last year and a half to 2 years on incidences. And you've seen them both escape on the issue of, we don't have transparency on the debt register, and we don't have this, and we are seeing some things and we don't see some things. I think you've had them maybe even here on the show. But at the end of the day, any payment out of consolidated fund, and that I can tell you all debt payments are being done from consolidated fund, have had the approval of the COB.
Okay.
And how do they have that approval when they could not be attached to
It's
any
not
budget.
A budget.
Many of them to a budget.
And a project.
Yes.
Question number, I think, 4 now. We have seen the response on the letter from the Law Society of Kenya and even from others who have made public commentary since the establishment of the task force by the president have said this is the job of the Office of the Auditor General to audit all our accounts. Do you agree?
It is, as I said, her terms of reference are a forensic audit, but it has never happened. I think this situation is now out of hand.
Okay.
And I think it is beyond the Auditor General. It is beyond William Samoei Ruto. That's why I'm saying it is now a public clamor for open justice. That's why we want a judicial inquiry
Okay.
where we can all go and participate and we all hear and see. And we all debate. And we bring everybody. Some of these accusations I'm making here, I would love them to be in front of the camera answering these questions. I would even love being the one who's questioning them. Right? It is beyond those offices because they do not have credibility.
Okay.
Why has the Auditor General not done it?
Sure. So
And let me advise the president. Do not think you're just going to pick if this is the route that you end up taking. Your stooges to sit on that bench.
can I ask you, Jimmy,
It must
why-
be consultative. There's no cover up here, right? There must be a consensus in this country that this thing which is paining us and destroying generations to come, we're actually attempting to start dealing with it.
I have to ask, Jimmy, because Kenya is highly litigious. We know this. I mean, even this task force thing was stopped at court. So people will go to court really quickly to stop. This is something that has been going on for years. And from what you're saying, that to have an open inquiry is
A judicial
a
one.
judicial one is what would make sense. Why? That going to court, do you think that going to court with this evidence is not sufficient in
No,
terms
it's
of
not
getting an
sufficient.
answer?
It's not sufficient because you have to collect the evidence. The Goldenberg judicial inquiry is a very good example, right? Here you had 3 judges led by, I think it was Justice Bosire,
Yes.
who had a lot of credibility. And they called up evidence. All right? You had joint secretaries. They called up evidence. Right? And it was public. You were questioned. All right? A lot of settlements were gotten out of that, including Patney having to say, in a sense, that he had made some messes and is giving up this hotel.
Grand Regency.
Grand Regency.
Yeah.
So it was open. We all heard what exactly happened, right? And action was taken. This is a similar situation. And I can tell you, this one I doubt will be questioned in court, right? It's a judicial inquiry. In fact, the Bosire one had, I think, Bosire, I can't remember the second. I think only one was a retired. I think there was Lapelli, a lawyer. And I think I can't remember the third judge, right? Who was a member, in fact, of the judiciary at the time. So this is something the president has power to do. But as I'm saying here, he must not think he can do so unilaterally. It must be consultative. We must generally feel that it is a credible judicial commission of inquiry. It has credible people. And its terms of reference
Must be clear.
must be clear, including a short term to complete. Because this is not difficult. The books are all there. The record is all there. It's not difficult.
It sounds
I
like
completed.
it would have to be corporate in terms of people coming together. with all of this information, right?
Yes. I would even want to be summoned. I will appear with my forensic auditors. Okay? We did this in about 4 months or so. All right? 4 to 5 months. Right? And that was, we had to search for the data. Okay? Which was available. It's publicly available. So, this can be complete as an exercise within maybe 3 months. And have a report. This is what is odious, should be suspended, right? This is what we've paid, and I can tell you at the end of it, judging from what we have already done, because this is the first forensic audit on debt, judging from what we have done, the Kenyans do not owe anybody any money. In fact, we're looking for refund. And those that we owe, that refund from those illegal parties we gave will go to paying them.
Okay.
That's how serious it is.
Okay. So the Busire Commission of Inquiry had 3 members. Chairman was the Honorable Justice Richard Samuel Busire. The vice chairman was Nzamba Kitonga.
Yes.
The late Nzamba Kitonga. And the commissioner was Peter Lepele.
Okay.
Right? Those 3.
Yes.
And they came up with a report. They handed it over to the president with various recommendations.
And I think you had joint secretaries and all that.
You had joint secretaries in the
So you had a
secretariat.
prosecution. I think you had a private prosecutor
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
Almost
I
like a
remember
private
people
prosecutor.
Like Waweru Gatonye
Correct.
and others
Correct.
were in this.
Were in this.
What would we expect to get out of such a process?
That process
What do
would
you expect to
define.
be the outputs?
Oh, it would be very clear. It would define what is called odious. Odious meaning that any debt that was not taken within our laws, right, or has been paid outside of our laws as debt that is illegal to us. Any debt that was taken that did not come to us in any manner or form will be declared illegal. And the culprits will be recommended for charges. Now, if you do that, I can assure you, we have no debt.
Okay.
And we are freed from this monster that is eating 80% today of our tax revenue. The single biggest monster to our tax revenue is one item called debt. 80%, 80 shillings of every 100 it is eating up.
Okay. Once a debt is declared as odious, then what?
Oh, then we are freed. And in fact, wherever we have paid odious debt, we ask for it back. And that's now another process. But we are freed. You imagine, this last year we have paid 1.866 to debt. At that we are freed of that amount. We are paying a similar amount coming this year. We are freed of paying that. My friend, imagine what can happen in terms of development in Kenya.
Absolutely.
What miracle can we not have here? To do a level 6 hospital is about 10 billion. You put one in every county. You imagine the amount of roads. To do 10,000 kilometers of road would mean what?
You'll pay all your intern
Nobody
doctors.
here we will not need this free housing, this housing fund nonsense. Right? People here will never even live in mud huts. Right? And the stimulus it will create, the catalyst it will create to this economy. You will see this jobless, unemployed.
Okay.
You will be amazed with the figure.
So now show me the difference between a judicial commission of inquiry that has a judge or 2 and a task force that has been set up that has the members that we've seen.
Does that
What's the
task force, in legal terms, I think I will not compete with what the LSK has said.
LSK has basically argued that the function of auditing belongs to the Office of the Auditor General
Yes.
as established in the
That
Constitution.
is one. I think the other, with what he established, is that he called it a forensic task force.
Yes.
And none of the parties there is a forensic auditor. None of those parties are forensic auditors. I would not even say any of those parties are experts in what is called public finance management. Nancy Onyango is very well reputed in the IMF, but she has never done public finance management here in Kenya. She may be a very good economist. Public finance management. She's actually a monetarist. She has not done public finance management. And there is no forensic auditor in that team.
They can be co-opted by the Secretariat.
No. Where is that terms of reference? If you see the terms of reference in the Gazette notice, there is no such opening. None. No such opening. That to me, in fact, was done either shoddily or part of cover-up.
Okay.
So it has. Let's put it this way: its credibility already now is in doubt. So he should dispense with it.
But then,
I don't even know why they need to continue with the court battle. He should just revoke that Gazette notice
how would you...
and come back and say we have a tried and tested method called a judicial commission of inquiry, right? And even seek some consultation on its membership and its terms of reference. There are enough people he can consult with. And you come up with something very credible that we can all buy into. And it must be public, because this is about public money. We all want to go and make submissions. We all want to hear others making submissions.
One nagging argument, if we just take the letter and the statement by the Law Society of Kenya will still stand.
The Auditor General
The
can be
job-
part of that secretariat.
The Constitution
She
does
can-
not say that the Auditor General
A judicial commission of inquiry.
participates in another.
A judicial
commission.
commission of inquiry is a different entity. Is a different entity.
Yes.
She can be told to do her own forensic audit and submit. Jimmy Wanjigi will come with his.
You know, your reference point was the Goldenberg, the Busire
Yes.
Commission. If you looked at the recommendations that they made, the number of people who were censured, the number of people who were prevented from traveling because they had been seen to be complicit, people who were, their guilt was recommended. As I said, it was comprehensive. That the only thing is that not whatever was expected to have been done was not quite done.
Yeah, buana.
But one knew who the players were, something that had never happened before. One knew who had done what. Because by the time Kanyotu's name was coming out,
Yes.
that
That was a name nobody ever used to mention.
No,
Yes.
people didn't mention it.
So
Look at it this way, CT. That was the beginning. Today, with the amount of transparency, everyone will be exposed. And literally, the recommended charges will end up seeing people
In jail.
in jail.
Our time is up, Jimmy. Thank you very much for joining us. So your call is a Judicial Commission of Inquiry to do a forensic audit of our debt, declare any debt that's outside of the law,